Well, good afternoon, everybody. Updating you on the situation here with the rain that is finally falling across the metro. A nice light to moderate rain, the kind of thing you want when we're in the middle of what is severe drought, of course, for much of Minnesota. We'll take a look at what's going on here on the radar right now and show you that we are seeing that rain really covering much of southern Minnesota from basically St. Cloud is where the northern extent of the showers is. And south of there. We're not expecting severe weather today, in case you were wondering. I know some people get a little jittery and nervous about the potential for severe weather. Yeah, this system is going to dampen our rain chances. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday about why that would happen and where the focal point for severe weather will be today. And we'll talk more about that in a second here. But I wanted to show where the rain is falling right now. As we zoom right into the metro, you can see pretty much everybody except for the northeastern suburbs. If you were in Lino Lakes, Matamidi, Stillwater, it is right on your doorstep. The showers will be there as well too. Pretty good rainfall rate falling here. I'm watching a couple joggers stuck here in downtown Minneapolis in the rain right now. They should have looked at the radar ahead of time. And yeah, as I mentioned, that northern extent just starting to get up towards Sartell, you can see, or I'm sorry, St. Cloud. But south of there, some pretty good rainfall falling right now on Silver Creek, Annandale, and then further south is where we have some heavier showers. And a couple of thunder showers have just popped up. Or just showers, I should say, some downpours. We're not seeing any lightning in this right now, but around Luck, Wisconsin, Balsam Lake, some of those areas in North Branch. This is ahead of that rain coming up from the south. So you actually see that cool outflow from that larger area of showers and thunderstorms helping to act really like a miniature cool front and produce those showers to the north. But it's further south where we're actually seeing more significant weather. This was a severe line. There are no warnings anymore. These things are kind of petering out. This all developed hours ago, late last night, across Wyoming and South Dakota, which we're going to talk a little bit more here in a second. But if you do have plans to travel along 94 into Wisconsin, it's going to be a bit of a mess because we got rain falling basically the entire stretch from Minneapolis all the way down to Madison, Wisconsin. So you know how slow it can be there. And again, nothing severe, but this is the most intense part of what we call this mesoscale convective system or complex. It's a cluster of thunderstorms. They typically develop at night, and they can also destroy our chances of severe weather. They can have their own severe weather if they keep going, but it is going to really put the kibosh on the atmosphere, at least over our area here for much of Minnesota and into Wisconsin. But you can almost see how this bows out from southwest to northeast here as it's literally just crossed 94 within the last 20 minutes or so. That's what's left of that bow or wind. It was creating severe wind gusts over 60 miles an hour when they initially developed in South Dakota and Nebraska late last night. And then we're really going with some warnings here up until just a few hours ago, riding the Minnesota-Iowa border, but nothing severe there anymore. But they're probably getting some 40, 50 mile an hour gusts still out of that. And that's also where most of the lightning is. You can see some of these flashes here in Osseo, Wisconsin, Eau Claire getting some flashes. And this is also the most intense area of the rain. So as we zoom out, now, as you understand that picture, you can kind of see why that eastern flank of this system, this mesoscale convective system, just means not quite a small scale like a thunderstorm, micro scale, and not quite synoptic we use in meteorology, which is a larger scale, which would be over several states, let's say, but mesoscale, middle atmosphere. But this is all an organized system, and it's that bow out ahead of it that is helping to feed the warm, humid air out ahead of it into the rest of this rain. But as you get further from that bow, as you can see here across the Minnesota side of things, the rain does get lighter. But it means we are in for at least a few hours of a light to moderate rain, which is good. The downpours on top of the dry ground would be a bit of an issue. But it is going to dampen the amount of rain that we would have seen out of this scenario. We were talking the last few days that there was the potential for 1 to 3 inches of rain, but because we're not going to get that redevelopment, that second round later in the day, which would have brought severe weather too, that also means that we're going to see significantly lesser amounts, probably under an inch in the metro. So not a drought busting rain, but steady rain here through the afternoon, maybe even as late as 5, 6 p.m. this evening. So kind of hunker down here for an unusual scenario for us this summer, which is a wet afternoon. So I wanted to break down what's been happening. We talked about this yesterday as far as what we would experience. And I said yesterday, if we got this morning activity, which some of the models were hinting at, that this would really bring down any risk of severe weather for us, and then potentially rainfall amounts. So that's what's changed here in the last 12 to 24 hours. We saw this mesoscale convective system develop. We've got a wave of energy that's come out of northwestern Canada. We call this a short wave. It's basically like a cool front aloft, which is the focal point for development of showers, thunderstorms out ahead of it, which is what happened. You're looking at a replay loop. So basically around the Black Hills, we saw these storms develop into a line, and then they form into this mesoscale convective complex that we talked about. So the Storm Prediction Center 2 has shifted that risk. Yesterday, the enhanced risk was from the Twin Cities south. Now it's really mainly an Iowa into southwestern Wisconsin threat. In fact, I don't even think Minnesota at all gets into this. So stay tuned. They'll probably shift that enhanced risk even further. So here's 6 o'clock this evening. I think the rain is done. So you can still get out in the evening, maybe that walk, run, or bike ride. Everything will be wet, but I think the rain will be done falling. And this is going to bring down those rainfall amounts, as I mentioned, to probably a ½ inch or so in the metro with this steady rain. So good rain, but not the 1 to 3 inches that we could have seen. And this is zooming in a little bit more, you can see on the metro, but areas to the south where they could get in on some of that activity later in the day could get some of those heavier amounts, and they got more out of this system this morning because it was still more intense moving along the Minnesota-Iowa border. So what we're looking today as far as severe weather is that convective available potential energy, basically where is the highest instability, which requires not just humidity and all the dynamics aloft, but some sunshine. That'll probably happen much further south into Iowa. Supercell index, where storms could get more organized, that's probably also going to be more in north central, northeastern Iowa. And again, all this hinges on Iowa too, getting some sunshine. We'll take a look at some of the satellite imagery here in a second to show you where that might be happening, but also the risk of any tornadoes. This is the significant tornado index also, right? Everything just overlaps there in northeastern Iowa, and as well as the potential for some strong winds. So winds, hail, tornadoes, all possibilities with these storms in Iowa. This shows the path of some of those highest wind gusts, the brighter colors, those potential for some severe wind gusts. So here's looking at Iowa, development about 3-4 p.m., and then those storms will track east and become more of a straight line wind event where the initial development could have some of those supercells, which are those organized singular storms that can produce some tornadoes. But I want to talk a little bit about the smoke too, because this is worth mentioning. The northern half of Minnesota is under an unusual air quality alert, and this is because the winds have shifted overnight. A ton of smoke. I've showed you this on and off for the last couple of weeks. A lot of fires to the west. This is just the beginning of what's probably going to be a severe fire season, but winds shifted with this front coming through overnight. So it's been out of the northeast, which is wrapping around the smoke from those Canadian fires. So we still have fires north of Lake of the Woods in eastern Manitoba, far western Ontario, and that's been blowing in. So everything that's not green is lower air quality, and even in the Twin Cities, it's moderate right now, but you got reds and oranges from Fargo, Duluth, Brainerd. Those are areas with poor air quality, so if you have any issues, asthma or anything, you definitely don't want to be outside in the northern half of the state. Then we're talking about the heat dome. It's going to be building, and over our region, closer to us, I should say, instead of the west coast or the southwest, it's going to be more just to the west, Montana, and then potentially redeveloping a little closer to us yet by next weekend. And that's why some of the models still are hinting at that possibility of triple digits. Now, this is a high-end scenario. It doesn't mean it's going to be 100, 105, 110 degrees, but that is that extreme scenario if it develops over us. So don't look for movement on temperatures today, but after this, I'm afraid we're not looking at any more rain. A gorgeous weekend, but we do need the rain. The heat builds in, and things will just dry out more. In fact, close to 90 by Sunday. It looks like we're in for a heat wave, which means consecutive days in the 90s starting Monday and maybe all of next week. Some models bring us back down for maybe one day, middle of next week. But again, possibly the hotter conditions are going to be for us as we head into next weekend. So that, what's today? The 14th, we're looking at the 22nd to the 24th of July. That period is when the models are really trying to bring in maybe some of the most heat for us yet. So taking a look at the radar again here and showing you what's happening across the area, you can see that we are seeing the rainfall across the metro, and again, a nice steady light to moderate rain for the most part. It's not heavy, and again, that is a good thing because the ground is so dry. But yeah, no severe weather in any of this, and you can kind of see the spin on this. If I draw it on here, you can kind of see where these showers are trying to develop southwest, And then out ahead of it, you can see things moving more northeast, definitely from southwest to northeast towards Eau Claire. And then kind of in between, you have these almost stagnant showers. So this really shows how this is a mesoscale convective complex, kind of its own thing. So you can kind of think in the middle, right around New Prague, you've got sort of a low pressure and everything rotates counterclockwise. So as you get this intense area of rising air, large area of showers and thunderstorms, it produces its own little low pressure system basically. And as we mentioned, with its own cool front as well as you head out towards Eau Claire. So that's basically what this bow is. You can see it's basically like its own cool front moving out. And what that does is pushes all this warmer air up ahead of it, and it feeds into the system. In fact, all the way back towards us, that's all feeding into our moisture out ahead of that main bow there. So again, we are in this for a little while. Expect to see showers and thunderstorms through, and mainly just rain. There is some lightning, but it's primarily on the Wisconsin side where most of the energy is in this cluster of activity right now. And again, probably anywhere from 1/4 inch to 3/4 of an inch of rain for the metro when it's done. But want to show you the satellite imagery and show you where we could see some clearing here. We're already starting to see sunshine pop out into parts of western Iowa, and that's where, again, that Iowa is where we're going to see the potential for those severe storms later in the day. But, you know, we're already getting close to one. So those peaks of sun will make a big difference. We'll see how many of those we can get going here, and that's going to destabilize the atmosphere over that area. And I'm going to just zoom in here a little bit and look at some of our latest model guidance as we head into the afternoon hours here across the south. So here's the latest. This is one of our short-term models. I call it the HRRR. It updates hourly, and it shows this cluster of activity moving through. And then as you watch Iowa, this is 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, we start to see those stronger storms develop potentially into northwestern Iowa and then sweep across the state. You can see a line of storms actually developing all the way back into Nebraska. And that's when we'll be looking for the potential for some stronger storms. In fact, maybe we can zoom in here on Iowa and try to see what development time. So maybe 3 hours from now. Again, that's all dependent on if we get enough sunshine down there to the south in western Iowa. We'll zoom in on Iowa satellite imagery because I think there's probably a little more sunshine popping out than we realize right now. Yeah, western Iowa, and then also kind of sneaking in from the southeast. So as this system continues to move to the east and northeast, that's going to allow sunshine to break out there into Iowa. I just want to take a look at some of the temperatures right now. I'm going to put on some of the station plots. It's very humid. We got dew points in the low 70s, and notice here temperatures with just that little bit of sun popping from the 70s, like we are all the way into the mid 80s. So that's why things could destabilize quickly into Iowa. So the red numbers there are the temperatures, and you're seeing kind of a loop over the last few hours. So I'll see if some of our contours are picking up on that yet. Not quite yet, but yeah, a lot of moisture there. Where there's already, this is showing where there's already that thunderstorm energy that I talked about. So CAPE, convective available potential energy, it's that combination of sunshine and moisture, and it is starting to really add up there in southern Iowa. 3,000 kilojoules of CAPE. That is quite a bit of energy, and we'll see how much of that can migrate to the north here. And potentially create some of that severe weather in central and north central, northeastern Iowa. Again, that is where the Storm Prediction Center is watching for later in the day today. We'll see if they've updated their risk at all. They do this a couple times a day, but yeah, again, I would even cut southeastern Minnesota out of this entirely because I think we're primarily looking at this Iowa chunk of this. So if you can kind of ignore most of the Wisconsin part and southeastern Minnesota, it's mainly going to be that northeastern third or so of Iowa that has the best chance of seeing that activity. So that's what we're looking at there for the severe weather for later in the day. For us, though, I'm going to head back into the radar and then also maybe look at some emails here and see what we're getting in here from folks. But yeah, so we're looking at the radar there, and you're seeing those showers starting to really fill in a little bit more here on the back end of things. So that's some good news. We do have some questions I want to get to Joe's asking, any chance of damaging winds, hail, or tornadoes by Rochester this afternoon? Yeah, I think I kind of just answered that, but I'll just sort of reiterate. I really do think that we're looking at northern Iowa, north central and northeastern Iowa as we head into the late afternoon for redevelopment today. So that's probably the best chance of that. Dan says it seems to have been a pretty quiet severe weather season this year. Yeah, very quiet. And that kind of lines up with the fact that we're in a drought. 70% of our rainfall in the warm season, so May through September, our growing season rainfall comes from thunderstorms. And the fact that we're so dry just says basically we haven't had many thunderstorms. And yeah, it is a very low risk of severe weather so far this season. So that's definitely lined up with what you're experiencing and your intuition. It has been a very quiet year, and so meteorologists who kind of love storms were sort of disappointed this year. Thank you, Percy, saying I'm the best, and Poira and I can't even say that, but weather's still going to be 112 next week. So let's look at that. We talked about what's going on with some of the models here over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to reconnect my radar here on my iPad so that I can pull up the radar on one thing and show you another thing to answer that heat question, because that's going to be the big thing after this, as we are talking about the heat moving on in here again already by Sunday, Monday. So yeah, that's what's going to be going on. So there's the radar there. I'm going to pull up the heat for next week to show the name that I can't pronounce, just comment about what's going on there. So yeah, so you're looking at, this is the GFS model or the American model's meteogram. This is next Friday, Saturday. So it is still giving us triple digits, 101, 103 degrees. Will that happen? It's not impossible. Hitting 100 degrees in the Twin Cities happens on average every other year. And so we're about due for one. And the reason I've been bringing up some of these triple digit readings, so I think he's asking about, on Sunday I'd posted the same model had us at 110 in the same period. And I posted that not saying that that's a forecast or like, hey, bank on this. That's the one extreme scenario. We have many different models, all with different scenarios, and most of them are in the 90s, but that extreme scenario is 110, which would be a new record for the Twin Cities, by the way. 108 is our all-time record, so 110 would definitely break that. And the reason that it's even plausible is because we saw that happen in the Pacific Northwest, Colorado and Wyoming. Mexico had an all-time high temperature for June, and Death Valley, if they verify that 130 degrees, would be the new verifiable, reliable world record. There are some other records around the world that are from sensors that were like, yeah, it's it's kind of like a car thermometer, a bank thermometer. May not be so accurate because they don't have the same stringent standards that most of the World Meteorological Organization requires. So 103, probably more likely than 110, but it all depends upon if the heat dome builds over us. So that's what I really want to emphasize here. So here's the European model by next Friday, and it has the heat dome sort of reforming over South Dakota. That's pretty close. Now, if we look at the American model, the reason it's hotter, you can see it's more intense with the development of the core of the heat dome over the Dakotas. I'll toggle back to the European. You can see, well, we got to choose the right model run. You can see it's less intense, lighter shades basically, than what the American model is showing. And the Canadian model is kind of more spread out and off to the west. So when we look at these different scenarios, so there's the American model again. It has a peak high temperature of about 103. But if we look at the Canadian model, it has us at 96 instead of 101, so slightly cooler. This is, again, we're looking at next Friday. And if we look at the European model for the end of next week, 95 for next Friday. So 103 is not implausible. I will say too that for us this year as well during our heat wave, that the models underdid the actual temperatures we saw. And that's what they saw out west. And you hear from a lot of meteorologists who say, well, we didn't believe the models because they were so extreme. When you're forecasting all-time records, that's some pretty crazy stuff. But that's exactly what happened. And so, this summer, with the amount of heat that's in the Northern Hemisphere, North America specifically, but it's not just us, it's the entire Northern Hemisphere has a lot of extra heat compared to normal. And so, breaking some of these records, maybe not all-time records, but looking at the higher end of the several different scenarios that we have is not implausible, given with what we've been seeing as far as the heat dome. But so that's that. Today is not about heat. We'll look at the radar one more time, and then I'll let you get back to work, since I think we're all on a lunch break, right? So there's the rain falling across most of the metro. It is starting to pick up in intensity, up 94, so that's some good news. Becker, Monticello, Big Lake, that's where we're seeing some of the heavier rainfall rates right now, and Watertown off to the west. So I showed you a little bit earlier, for those of you who maybe missed this or just joining, we call this a mesoscale convective complex because it's kind of basically its own little low pressure system. Started out as a cluster or line of thunderstorms that developed last night, and then tracked east and becomes its own spinning area with its own cool front. That's what we're seeing right now out past Eau Claire. That's basically a cool front. We call that a bow. So that moves, that's the cool, rain-cooled air moving out ahead of the system, and then the warm, humid air moves out ahead of it. But you can see where these storms are kind of training, or even look like they're trying to move from northeast to southwest against the normal flow of the atmosphere. But then you see to the south, east of us, from Austin, Rochester towards Eau Claire, everything is moving southwest to northeast. So we have that large scale rotation with sort of like its own low pressure here sitting right over Lakeville, St. Peter, that area. And so where these things sort of converge, and you can kind of see that here, where things converge, we're starting to get these more intense lines to develop. So that's what this long line of more intense showers is, from Redwood Falls, Olivia, Litchfield, Monticello, North Branch. You can see that. So that's why the models are hinting at some higher amounts maybe for a few places. We'll go back and look at maybe at some of the updated computer model forecasts for total rainfall, because that could show you a little bit of what we're looking at here. Yeah, and sure enough, even the HER is hinting at that. Our shorter term model. I'll put that up here. So this is total rainfall, and you can kind of see where it does have this sort of broken, more intense line, as I sort of outlined here. Let's go there. So yeah, you can, if you look at the radar in the lower part of your screen, where I had outlined where that heavier band of rain is setting up, and then where the model is hinting at that heavier line of rainfall amounts as well, off to the north and northeast. It sort of lines up there. So, that's indicative of maybe some of those spots. Again, and this is partly why we wait for the radar to actually fill in too, because then we can see what's going on a little bit better. And so we're seeing the radar setting up those heavy bands that the models are hinting at over those specific areas. So the model isn't exactly right, but it's got the idea of what's basically happening. So that's where we could, see some of these heavier mounts set up here. So basically Redwood Falls, Olivia, Litchfield, Becker. You guys could see better chance of maybe some 1-inch amounts, but then there's also some slightly more intense bands here in parts of the metro right now too. As we zoom in, the northern and eastern suburbs right now, seeing some of the heavier showers. So from Rogers, Anoka, Coon Rapids, and then sort of, again, kind of a broken line off towards Hudson and Lakeland into Wisconsin. So still the chance we could get some 1-inch rainfall amounts for some areas, but we're not going to see those 2-3-inch rainfall amounts for the most part around the metro or north of the Twin Cities, because we're not going to get that second round of weather later today. So again, the risk for severe weather today is really going to be off to the southeast. I'll put that up again from the Storm Prediction Center. I would cut Minnesota out of this, in fact. So we're mainly looking at north central, northeastern Iowa for the risk of severe weather later today. So there's a little update on the rain. Enjoy a rainy afternoon. Again, it should wrap up around 5-6 o'clock, and then we're into sunshine and the heat building for the weekend into next week.